In this update, we've got multiple winter storms in the week ahead, along with several cold shots. So we're going to break down the details for you with each one of them ahead. Here is your winter storm severity index between now and the 13th of February. This is technically going to be two systems, with the first system with minor to major impacts in a good part of Kentucky, as well as into West Virginia, into Virginia areas, into the DC region, Baltimore, Maryland, back into Delaware, and then up the Jersey Pike, up into New York City, as well as into Connecticut, Massachusetts, and Rhode Island. Then we'll have a secondary system that moves into the plains that's going to impact eastern areas of Colorado, heavy snow there in Kansas. Further south, we could be looking at some ice in Oklahoma City. Then that snow just amplifies in Missouri, back into Nebraska, as well as into Iowa. Then eventually going to shift into northern Illinois, into Wisconsin, into northern Indiana, and end up in Michigan. So if you are new to the channel and like detailed weather breakdowns, hit the subscribe button and you're in. You get all my daily content on this channel to keep you well ahead of the storm. So here is your hazard map for this morning. We've got very cold air to the north. We've got extreme cold advisories in place for Montana into the Dakotas, with temperatures well below zero and feels like 20 to 30 below zero. There is your newly impacted into Kansas with our winter storm watch is going to be taking effect with our new snow that's going to be unfolding across that region. And then we have our first system across areas of Kentucky, back into areas of West Virginia. Those are winter storm warnings, where we could include more ice down here into West Virginia and portions of Virginia, but it should be all snow in the DC region, as well as into Baltimore, into Delaware, and along into New Jersey. So as we move through, we're talking about the polar vortex. We've been actually talking about this for the last week or two on this channel, and the reason why we're going into more of an active pattern with much colder air is just the polar vortex is starting to stretch out. We're starting to feel the effects of it, and now that it's stretched out, and even hints of towards Valentine's, it could actually even split. And when that happens, that's going to keep the colder intrusions alive into the lower 48, not just in the week ahead, but likely well into next week as well. So let's take a look at the system coming up. So we've got that system, a lot of water vapor down further south. That's going to pull in a lot of the Gulf moisture. It should be raining big time down here in South Texas, as well as into Louisiana. It changes over to kind of a chillier rain further north. And then once you move further north into Oklahoma, it's likely to change over to more freezing rain. And then it's just all snow once you get up into Kansas and to Missouri. But we could be looking at some flooding rains with a compounding effect over the next couple of days, and it's tapping into some of that colder air. I mean, this is where we're at this afternoon. Definitely widespread 30s and 40s across the south. To the north, where more of that snowpack is, we got 20s, teens, and single digits. And then the true Arctic air is up into Canada, where we got those extreme cold advisories in place with well below zero temperatures. And these are actually high temperatures, folks. So as we move through heading into Tuesday afternoon, we should start to see heavier rains continuing to unfold further south. Look at the deeper, darker greens here. That's just an indication of some of that heavier rain could transfer to even some flooding rain for areas of Louisiana, Arkansas, northern Mississippi, and to Tennessee. But notice the transition to all snow once we get up into portions of Oklahoma and to Kansas, as well as into Missouri. But this is our first system that's likely going to lay down the most significant snows, at least in the beginning, for those areas into Kentucky, back into West Virginia, getting into Virginia regions. That's why we have the winter storm warnings in place. And then it's still going to continue to snow as we head into Wednesday morning, but this system will be winding down, with the other system coming across the plains will be cranking up. So that's when we have some heavier snows that will move into the eastern side of Colorado, but especially there in Kansas. That's why we have those winter storm watches in place now for this 5 to potentially 8 inches of snow that will blanket the region coming up on Tuesday into Wednesday. Further north in Nebraska, getting into Iowa as well as into Missouri. And there's some of that ice that could unfold across Oklahoma, especially there in the Oklahoma City region. So it's just going to be kind of a nasty day. And then, of course, further south, where they do have a little bit more instability, we do actually have a marginal risk for some of these likely turning severe into the heat of the afternoon. These areas are a little bit on the warmer side, so that way we have some areas that could, enhance some of those supercells to produce some 60-mile-per-hour winds and some isolated larger hail within these areas of Lake Charles, essentially in New Orleans, back into Jackson, all the way up into Birmingham. Then outside of there is just kind of your light to moderate rain showers. But overall, here's the breakdown. So this is your, the first winter storm that's going to be impacting across the region. So we could be looking at a good 6 to 8 inch swath of snow across good part of Kansas. Further south, that's where we do have some freezing rain potential in portions of Oklahoma, as well as into southern portions of Missouri. But further north, it should be all snow in northern Missouri, into Iowa, as well as into northern Illinois, and getting into Michigan with the most significant snows likely over Kansas with those 5 to 8 inch totals with this first system. Here's the breakdown. So we got the first winter storm that's going to be moving across Kentucky with a good 4 to 8 inch swath. And then another 4 to 8 inch, if not some isolated 10 inch amounts, where they do have the winter storm warnings in place into West Virginia. And then that just feeds into Virginia with a good 6 to 10 inches of snow. That also feeds into Washington, D.C. Then lighter amounts once you get up into Pennsylvania with a good 2 to 4 inches in areas of Philadelphia, back into New Jersey. And then even New York City will add a couple more inches of snow further north into Rhode Island, Massachusetts, as well as into Connecticut. And then there's that second piece of energy that comes out into the plains. You've got a good 1 to 3 inches across eastern areas of Colorado, and then a good 5 to 6 to 8 inch swath across areas of Kansas, getting into Nebraska, Iowa, as well as into Missouri, and a little bit higher amounts as this swings up into northern Illinois, and even potentially higher with some isolated foot totals up here into Michigan with that first and second system. And then here's the ice that likely is going to be associated with it. Some ice into the Texas Panhandle, but more likely they're into the Oklahoma region, southern portions of Missouri, back into central and southern Illinois, northern into Indiana, getting into northwestern Ohio. And that's when we could see some crippling ice with over a half-inch ice accretions down there into far portions of West Virginia, as well as into the western sides of Virginia, and then lighter amounts, but from a glaze to a quarter of inch up here into Pennsylvania, where they've had their fair share of ice as of late. But here's the snow depth once that storm moves through. So this will be a new fresh snowpack that'll be laid on the ground across the central part of the U.S. And then we have yet a potential another cold shot on the way. At the same time, we've got another atmospheric river event that's going to be coming ashore off the West Coast, but this one's likely to include the entire state of California. So we're likely seeing some heavier rains into San Francisco, down to Monterey, does further south into Los Angeles, getting all the way further south into San Diego. We could be looking at couple 1 to 3 inches of rain that'll include some flooding and some mudslides across that region. At the same time, we'll have that reinforcing shot of colder air coming in from the north, and that'll have to go over that newly fresh snowpack as well. So that's going to keep these areas much colder than they normally would have been, but also keep the areas further south, say into Oklahoma and Texas, much colder as well. So it's going to be a cold day, cold morning there into the southern plains. And that will also create that another snowstorm that likely unfolds this weekend. So we have the system that's going to be coming off the West Coast with the heavier rains on Thursday that moves across the Intermountain West on Friday. And that's going to end up back in the plains again with more snow compounding on top of the 5 to 8 inches you're already going to get. that will include more snow for the weekend into Nebraska, areas of Iowa again, northern Illinois, back into Wisconsin, getting into Michigan. And then, of course, further south is just an all rain event and could be looking at some heavier rains. Even some severe storms could unfold across the Dixie Alley on Saturday afternoon, Saturday night. At the same time, there's the freeze line. So north of that red line, that's likely going to be all snow. And where you see the darker blues, that's likely heavy snow unfolding across this region. So that'll lay down more snow across these areas, and then more of a chillier rain moving further south. And that's where we do have some of the severe storms that are likely going to unfold. Even right now, we have a day 6 for severe storms heading into Saturday afternoon, Saturday evening, for likely almost the entire state of Louisiana, Mississippi, and Alabama. So we'll have to keep on high alert watching this come together. And a little bit of the warmer sector down here across the southeast. Further north, it's just going to be more of ice and then all snow. So the breakdown for your weekend storm looks like this. So that's another swath. This is outside of the first 1 to 2 storms. This is essentially your third winter storm that's going to be impacting Saturday and Sunday. So we'll have that system that comes in off the west coast. That'll lay down a blanket of snow across the Intermountain West. And then heavier snows will be moving back in across Kansas, Nebraska, as well as into Missouri, Iowa, back into northern Illinois again. And look, that, folks, more snow for Michigan. I mean, this is on top of the 8 to 10 inches you're going to get from the first and second system. This is the third system that could lay down another 8 to 10 to 12 inches of snow across that region. And we're likely not done, because that's going to continue to push even a stronger cold front, because again, it has to go over that snowpack. So each of these cold fronts likely gets a little bit colder, especially with that polar vortex stretching. And then especially now we're heading into more of a split. So that's gonna keep one of those polar lobes to keep funneling down some of that Arctic air into the lower 48, and it's got to go over that new snowpack as well. So that's going to put a reinforcing shot of much colder air as we head into the following week. This is your 17th time frame. So as the first system moves out back into as we flip after midnight, we could be looking at snow coming in on the back side of that system into Ohio. That'll transfer from the rain to all snow into West Virginia. And then more snow will be unfolding across Pennsylvania, upstate New York, and back into Vermont and New Hampshire, and getting into the Maine region. And then look at this, folks. This could be even a stronger system, right? That's pretty nasty looking. Again, and this is kind of a ways out, but this is the middle of the following week. But we could be looking at a much more significant system, and even further south by then with that newly laid snowpack that has to go across the plains. So this air mass is likely going to be much colder by then, all the way down into the deep south. So that's going to put a dent and knock out any severe threat across the Dixie Alley region as that colder air mass continues to push further south. And that will likely put any possible wintry precipitation by then potentially even further south. So these areas could include more areas into Oklahoma, into areas of Texas, and then more snow for Missouri, back into Illinois. This could be likely now put the bullseye into Indiana, into Ohio region, with the setup much further south with the newly laid snowpack. We could be looking at some heavier snows and more significant snows. And I can't even rule out a blizzard potentially possibly forming by then with this particular setup. As we get a little bit closer, well, obviously we'll be fine tuning this, but we got multiple winter storms that we highlighted with this very active pattern over the next 7 to 10 days. So guys, I appreciate you guys watching. Do like this video, definitely hit the subscribe button, and catch the next update. Wire protect you before and after the storm.